All right, everybody, welcome to the Long Island Band of Brothers. My name is Dr. John McAtamney, and our special guest tonight is a lady called Angela Rose. I know Angela for a really long time. She used to work for CLA, and she worked for Chiro Touch, and she's gone on to some really interesting journey that she's basically taken herself on. Her basically her recent thing that she's doing is called she's a certified exit planner. So I'm going to let her explain what that is. But Angela has a really interesting perspective because of all the things she's been involved with chiropractic, and I think it's something that you really want to listen to. So, Angela, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Well, thank you, and great to meet all of you. I was just sharing before all of you came on that I'm coming in from Chicago, from the one of the western suburbs in Chicago. So don't hate me. We move a little slower here, and if I have a funny accent, it's just, that's how it is here in the Midwest. I also am just learning a new technology. I'm learning Canva, and I just put this PowerPoint together today. So it's not great. I'm not going to lie. PowerPoint is not my superpower. It's like not my jam. I mean, see, I just called it PowerPoint, but it should be Canva. Anyway, so I just want to have a conversation with you guys tonight. I have an interesting journey in my career, and I really am interested in hearing about where you are in your journey as well. I want to share some things with you that I've learned along the way, but also get your perspective on it. So, as Dr. Mack mentioned, I have a certification to be a certified exit planning advisor. And so, the topic that I want to talk about tonight, I'd love to get your thoughts on, is really the idea of a transition, right? So, the transition when it comes to what happens when you're ready to leave your practice, whatever that looks like. So, the title today is the chiropractic exit model most docs believe in, and it's why it's quietly breaking. So also, I'll make a bold statement here that says most docs, and quite honestly, small business owners, it's not just docs, think they have a business, but really, when it boils down to, is it's a job. It's a really great job that you do a really great. You provide a great service. You get a great income. You have built something really phenomenal that most people never do. So that in itself is amazing. Now, why who am I and why does it matter? So I just thought I asked Dr. Mack if he had an old picture of us. So we've known each other well over 25 years. I've got a lot of logos on this screen, and so why does that matter? Well, as he mentioned, I started working at CLA. I was new out of college, and it was right after 9/11, so no one was hiring except for CLA in a sales job. So I moved to New Jersey and I met a lot of really great docs on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, all of the East Coast. I was with CLA for several years, really just as you know, with the equipment, the subluxation station, working with docs on marketing and how to bring more patients in, and then how to use the equipment in the exam and in the office. After I left CLA, I worked for ChiroTouch. So I went for 10 years at ChiroTouch. I worked with a lot of the leaders in the profession, built the webinar program. We hosted almost 500 webinars over the years, and really got to see a different side of chiropractic. I got to see a lot of the inner workings. At that point, I had worked for a good friend of mine who was a Gonstead doc, small practice, but really getting involved with ChiroTouch and working for ChiroTouch, I really got a completely different viewpoint of all the different types of practices in the profession, but also just the profession as a whole. The politics, the different leaders and groups and speakers. Um, don't hate me because I worked for ChiroTouch. I know many of you have used it or maybe still use it. And at the end, it wasn't so great. Part of why I left. And then I went from there on to Chiro One and on to Curis. Both of these companies here, if you're not familiar with them, both of them own multiple chiropractic offices. So why does that matter, and why does it apply today? Well, I'd been around the profession enough. I grew up in it, right? I started as a patient. I worked as a CA. Parker was my first seminars. That's where I met Patch and Tempo. It's how I got to CLA. It's how I got to Chiro Touch. It's how I got to Chiro One and then Curus. And with Chiro One and Curus, it was really around the idea of buying chiropractic clinics and rolling it into a model. And at Chiro One, they called it an acquisition department, and they said, "Here's what we're doing: we're buying and we're bringing them into our model." I had never heard of that before. Like I'd never seen that in our profession. I said, "Oh, I know a lot about that. I don't know a lot about mergers and acquisitions." So I've spent well over the last 8 years in that portion of chiropractic. And why would this matter to you, right? Why does this part of my journey matter to you? Well, because I've talked to a lot of chiropractors, and most recently, in the last just under a decade, a lot who were considering selling their practice, thinking about it, but not ready or not ready, right? And I've had hundreds of conversations with chiropractors and even now small business owners, because I do this outside of chiropractic as well. And what I realized in the conversations I had is there is an enormous amount of focus on once you get out of school, it's building your business, right? And rightly so, right? It's honing your craft, it's finding an office to join, it's building the business. If you're starting your own, it's really, there's a ton to learn, but it's really head down and build. How do you build? Then you reach the second phase of business that I like to think of as it's more of that kind of middle ground where you're sustaining, right? You've honed your craft, you've delivered thousands of adjustments at this point. You've hired staff, you've done training, maybe you've hired mentors, you have steady patients, you know the business, like now you know the business, and you're in this like rhythm, right? You're in this hum of the business. And that business can last for decades. I mean, a lot of times it's, for some of you on the call, I mean, it's 4 decades, right? That you've been in that part of your career and of your journey, right? It's not just a career, it's like of your calling and of your life. But what I have found, and where I think there's a gap, and really where I'd love a conversation to start going, is what's next, right? So that's the conversation that I have with a lot of docs and small business owners is what's next, right? You've been in business 25, 30, 40 years, and what's next? Like, what is the plan? And there's options, right? But there's some new options. Things are changing. One of the things that I was asking before all of you came on is really some of the things that you've seen over the years and how you've seen the profession change. And this is one area that I can say, at least from my perspective, that I've seen a humongous change. And it's really that transition of business, right? So we'll talk about that a little bit. So these are some of the patterns that I've seen that honestly, like I can't ignore them. And again, my slides aren't pretty, but I'd love to have a conversation around it. I think one of the ways that businesses used to transition is you'd have an established doc, and that doc would either bring in an associate and then potentially sell to that associate, or offer that associate to buy in over time. There'd be a slow transition. Sometimes it would just be a pure sale, right? So doc is ready to retire. They're ready to move to Florida, or they're ready to move to Puerto Rico or somewhere south, or travel or golf or whatever. And there's a transition from just owning the business to selling it. So that's another option. The first option is kind of a slow transition. This is more of a, just an actual sell. Maybe the selling doctor leaves shortly after. Um, but what we've seen and what I can honestly tell you is that that model is changing. Um, and there's a couple of reasons why it's changing. So the idea of the new grad's going to buy my clinic, it's a model that is not as common anymore as it used to be. New grads, I mean, let's talk about new grads. I was on a call Friday, and I was talking to actually someone, Dr. Mack, that you know from the old Master Circle days, and this person said that it's not uncommon for new grads to come out with $250,000 to $350,000 of debt. And I mean, that's just astronomical. And we know interest rates are up. It's, they're 7, 8%. And so the idea that, new grads could even afford it is, I don't think it's even in their realm for a lot of them. I mean, the amount of docs that are starting their own business is drastically down. And also buying businesses is drastically down. And the reason is they just simply can't afford it. I mean, I'm sure you all know that. One of the patterns that I don't think is new to any of us is they're very personality driven, right? I mean, all of your businesses are a reflection of you. It's like your own home. It's your own, your own style, your own clothes, your own, language, right? And so they're really our fingerprint is our business. And then the last piece is that when it's time for that transition, that there's not always a buyer, right? So interestingly enough, I've had a lot of conversations with docs that opened a business, opened a practice where they grew up, right? They went to school and then they moved home, or they met someone and then they moved to where their spouse is from, and it may be in a pretty rural area. um, and it becomes really difficult, right? That old adage of location, location, location still matters, right? Because even if you have a great business, you still need someone in it to run the business. So I've spoken to, I mean, countless docs that I can tell you had a great business that we couldn't buy or they couldn't sell because of location. So it's an observation that I share um, because I'm talking to doctors all over the country. And so this is not even region specific. Um, it's it's just some patterns that I'm seeing. Um, oh, and what I'm also seeing is that more are just closing the doors, right? I mean, I'm sure all of you are part of Facebook groups, and you see different docs on Facebook groups that are selling equipment. And I don't know about you, I'm not even a doctor, but it breaks my heart. I'm not even joking. Every single time I see it, it really breaks my heart. And it does. And what I'll share with you at the end a little bit about what I'm doing is like, I believe that with my unique experience and journey, like we can do better. Like we meaning those of us that support you doctors, like we can do that. So, also just a couple things about the buyers. As I started to mention, like those potential buyers that are coming out, they've got high debt. Because of that, they can't get financing. We've also seen that the lifestyle has changed. So this was a really interesting observation. I'm sure many of you, if you've spoken to new grads, if you've tried to hire a doctor or an associate, gosh, probably even in the past 10 years, you've seen this. So, it's interesting. 25 or so years ago, when I was first in the profession, it was common to go to screenings on the weekend. I mean, I have done hundreds throughout my career in chiropractic, different women's shows and, walks and runs and so forth, right? And that's not as common anymore, right? Like 25, 30 years ago, and I'm sure even many of you even longer, the idea was to, I mean, you're really working on your business all the time, all the time. Um, it's you're growing it, you're hiring, you're working on your operations, you're working on your notes, right? All those things. Or you're working and studying, you're learning how to improve your business or your marketing or your technique, whatever it is. There's plenty to learn. But the interesting thing that I've observed in the last 10 years with newer grads and younger docs is they want more of a lifestyle and more security. So as you know, it used to be get out, build my own business, have unlimited potential, sky's the limit. It's really shifted to I really only want to work during the week. I want to have security. I want benefits. And that becomes really difficult because there are a lot of docs in the profession that while they want an associate or need an associate, they can't provide that. So there becomes this gap, right? There becomes this gap of like docs here that have put in those decades of learning and building the business and having a solid foundation, and docs that are coming out that have different needs and different wants. And what happens is there becomes this gap right now. And I see it very clearly in our profession. And I have conversations every day on how do we bridge that gap? Because I see these docs like you that have just literally spent your whole life building something, making sacrifices that, and you have such an incredible business, an incredible practice, incredible patience, and you love to be able to pass this on to sell it, right? For the value that you've built. And then you have these other docs that really need something, but they can't get it. So, I mean, I am literally every day thinking about and asking questions and having conversations about how do we bridge this gap? Because I think we can do better. Like, I genuinely think, how do we get, you guys, when you're ready, a transition that you love and that you're comfortable with, right? Maybe it's sell, or maybe it's slow down, or go to 1 day a week or 2 days a week or whatever that is. And how do we ramp these doctors up? Because the other thing that I know that's really clear to me is the new grads, like, and again, I'm probably preaching to the choir here. Um, they need a lot of honing their skills, right? They really need a lot of practice, and they really need a lot of mentorship, like mentorship, hands on every day. I was at the local chiropractic IPSCA, it's called, here in Illinois 2 months ago. And I sat across from a doc that was an intern at my chiropractor's office. And I couldn't quite place him. I said, wait, you look familiar. Wait, you're that doc, right? Are you graduated now? He said, yeah. I said, well, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm working at the joint. And I said, great. How's that working for you? Right? I mean, there's a lot of people in the profession that have mixed emotions about the joint, and and everybody's entitled to their own thoughts and perspectives and opinions on it. But I was curious about him, right? He was working for it. And he said, I actually really enjoy it. I really like it. It's really good because I don't have to worry about the business. I don't have to worry about building the business. I don't have to worry about the marketing and the staff and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I work 3 days a week, or I think it was 3 days a week. He said, I love that. He said, the problem is that there are times where, I'm on fire and I'm adjusting and it's working well. And like, it's like, yeah, I'm in the groove. And then there's times where like, I'll go 4 patients and I just can't get their cervicals. And he's like, I got, I got nowhere to go. Right. So this mentorship is really lacking in this profession as it comes to just hands-on, right? Like literally the other doc being there saying, hey, here's how you should put your hands, or try the adjustment this way, or look at it this way. So just very interesting to see, to hear that shift. But he was happy with the salary. He was happy with the security, the benefits, the lifestyle that the joint was offering him. So I thought that was an interesting perspective. The other piece that is, very interesting to me as well is that new grads and new associates, the salary range has definitely increased. Again, I remember days where associate docs were getting paid, 4,000 a month, right? Maybe those jobs still exist, but I don't hear of them. I've heard the lowest that I've heard recently was 70,000. And again, maybe they're out there, but I think with what we've seen in the market, we've seen companies like Chiro One that has 150 locations. We've seen companies like The Joint that have plus or minus 1,000 locations. We've seen other franchises out there grow and expand. They've driven the starting salary. They've driven it up, right? There's a lot of market factors here, right? It's the factors that new grads are, their debt is higher, and then there's the fact that now we have kind of these corporate opportunities for chiropractors that literally did not exist 20 years ago. And so I think it makes it harder. This goes back to what I was just saying about, many docs like you that have just spent your whole life building this amazing practice and serving so many patients. And it's something that you want to find a way to transition to another doctor, but it's becoming more and more difficult because of some of these other factors that have entered the market that literally weren't there 20 years ago. And
Angela, something that's find interesting. I was talking to Brian McCulley from Life University,
yeah,
and he said back in the 80s, he goes, for every 10 doctors, 9 of them were going into private practice, and one guy might get an associateship. And he
yeah,
goes, the graduates coming out now, for the 10 of them, 9 of them are going into an associateship, and maybe one of them is going to open his own practice. So it's really interesting to see what you're talking about the whole thing that they want the lifestyle and security. I told you about a doc here on Long Island who it took
yeah.
him about a year and a half to find an associate, uh, basically so that he can retire in practice. So it's definitely an interesting question that we have to start asking ourselves.
I mean, it's a huge, I'm going to say problem, and it's not a conversation people want to have, like really talk about. I'll be honest. It's not, because the conversation that comes up a lot is, and I think I have it like in my next slide is, well, we'll get there, but but really the conversation is, I'm not ready, I'm not ready, I'm not ready. And then it's, I'm ready and I want to be done. Right. And, there's just a lot of different dynamics that are happening. And I think it's really important to have the conversation, right? To have the conversation of, how do we fix it? Like, I just keep coming back to, like, how do we fix it? Because I think it's crazy. All of you on the call have built incredible practices. You help thousands of patients. You've put in decades. You have incredible amounts of experience and knowledge. And there's just this huge gap between the new docs coming in. And it's like, how do we fix it so everybody wins, right? So that you guys actually can kind of cash in on what you've built and all that you've sacrificed through your whole experience, your whole career. And how do you kind of pass something off to that's good to someone else? So a couple other things about the businesses is that, from a buyer perspective, and remember, I was on the buy side for 8 years. Um, we know on the buy side, at least from like a corporate buyer perspective, that if if there isn't a doctor in the practice that will stay, we know that there will be a 25 to 50% drop in revenue. So from a buyer's perspective, even if you have $1 million practice, right, which we also know is, a small fraction of the profession, if we're not talking like medically integrated or functional medicine or all the other stuff, if it drops 25% and you're bringing in, $1 million, but it's going to drop 25%, I mean, that drastically affects the buyer's ability to buy it, right? Even though you've built an incredible business, it just makes it hard for a buyer because there is that transition. So, this is what I was saying earlier is it's really, I almost, it's just one of those conversations where most stocks say, hey, I'm not ready. And then they're ready and they want out like quickly. And I'll be honest with you, like by the time you want out, it's probably too late for you to get the real value that you deserve, in my opinion. Um, a couple other things here. We talked about this, many close the doors, there's no buyer, you sell it for equipment. It's really I mean, I don't know if you guys see this stuff, but I see it probably because I'm looking for it. Um, it's really heartbreaking to me. It is really like it's really one of those things, and they're not even my businesses. That's kind of, I mean, interesting. They're not, but I just think we can do better. Um, Here's one of the best case scenarios in our profession. There's a lot of talk about roll-ups and mergers and acquisitions and people getting all these multiples and stuff on their business. In our profession, that is not the reality. Like the reality is that your business is worth in general, again, this is high level, 0.8 to 1.6 times profit, not revenue. So there was this old idea that 20 years ago or 25 years ago that it's like, well, you could sell a practice for whatever the last 12 months was. And in the business world, it's TTM, trailing 12 months. So if your TTM was 300,000, that's what your practice was worth. That's not the case today. It's just not. I wish it was, but it's not. It's and these stats come from a broker. I mean, I've been on the buying side of deals that were better than this. But we were buying clinics and rolling them into our brand, which allowed us more leeway to spend a little bit more money. But if you are going to go out to a broker and you say, hey, I want to put I want to sell my business, right? And you can go out there, you can get valuations for your business. They'll range anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. If you're going to get a good like valuation for your business, somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000, just so that you have that data point of what to think, right? And if you take it to the broker, if you hire the broker and say, hey, I need your help, I'd love for you to help me do this. The average time for a broker is 14 months. So from the time you get started to the time the practice sells, if it sells, is 14 months. So, and it's in that range of 0.8 to 1.6 of what's called SDE, seller discretionary earnings. So it's all of your profit. So it's all the money that you made, you brought home, you took out of the office, whether that's a salary or owner's distribution or owner's draw, anything like that. So it's all of your money plus any add backs. So, and I'll just go over it in case somebody in the call doesn't know, but add backs are things that would be added back to the profit of the business. So let's say you run your cell phone through the business or your car payment or maybe some of your Costco purchases. I mean, everybody does it. Like we see that every day. Maybe you have your kids on the payroll, right? I mean, or you've got Uncle Joe on the payroll, right? I mean, we see a lot, a lot, a lot. And there's zero judgment behind it, but many of those things that are personal can be added back to the profit of the business. So maybe for your tax returns, you only made you let's say you brought in the business brought in, let's say $300,000. That's how much money you brought in the door. But then you have all those expenses, right? All the stuff from Costco and Amazon, and you've got staff payroll, and you've got taxes, and you've got, all these benefits, whatever that is, cell phone, all the stuff that you take out, all your expenses. And let's say that you report to the IRS that you only made $32,000 last year. And so you're taxed on the $32,000. When they go to value your business, it's the $32,000 plus your salary and any benefits basically that you ran through, right? So that's how they come up with like a SDE on that. Just to give you some ideas, if you weren't aware of like how a business could be valued. Sometimes, if you go to a broker, they'll add in your equipment, right? Equipment is added in. It's always depreciated. It's never, the value that you want to get for it. But even the best in the business is the timing is longer than most want, and what they end up with is less than they want. And on top of it, brokers will take anywhere from 10 to 15%. So whatever you make, subtract 10 to 15%. And quite honestly, I think that's a ripoff. Like, I think it's a total ripoff. I mean, I think I am on a journey to find a way to do better, because I don't think the value's there. And I think that's a lot to take. So, I mean, the real, problem is not that you don't have options. It's just probably not the options that you're hoping for, right? Like, I really, I just genuinely say that this is a problem that's very near and dear to my heart. It's just because I've seen it, that I've seen so many chiropractors that were amazing, the best adjusters, they've had great businesses, they did everything right, and then end up, closing the doors or selling their practice for literally pennies. And the ones that don't, awesome. But they're not as common anymore. They just aren't. And so I would love to help solve that problem and honestly bridge the gap, because I know there's a lot of docs like you out there that could really, just use a sounding board or a conversation or just some strategy on, hey, here's what I have. What do I do with it, right? Like, I'm maybe 5 years away, but how should I start thinking about what a transition looks like? Time is your friend. If you're, I would say if you're 2 or more years away, I'd say, you have some good time to really think about it. I think 3 to 5 is ideal. Like, it's just ideal, because there's a lot to selling your business, transitioning it, that there's a lot of work behind it. And honestly, that really deters a lot of people as well. So I think,
No, Angela, I think I'd like to bring up the fact that you and I had that big conversation one night regarding the fact that you see things going on in the rest of the country, but I explained a lot of the reasons why things are a little bit more difficult here in New York.
yeah,
Um, the difference because of what changes happened in workers' comp and no fault,
yeah,
um, the insurance reimbursement and how it's disappeared. For the most part, where other states have much more reimbursement than we have. So it's a different different parts of the states have different rules, but
it's true.
like the Joint has just come on to Long Island, and I think they have one or two places, but they don't have the same footprint that they have in other places as well. It's interesting because I know a young doc that you talked about, right? Like, the young docs coming out, and they went to work for a group, a chain down in Brooklyn. And the first thing that happened, I had to step in because they were doing UCAF, unlimited
Oh,
chiropractic care
yeah,
for a fixed fee. And
can't
I
do
said,
that.
I don't know who's your boss, but he's breaking the law.
Yeah,
I said, I don't want to
yeah.
report you, but I said, you need to, if they have any questions, call me. But I said, you can't do it that way. So, there's a lot of misunderstanding about how to do things. And I think, you brought up some really interesting points because, a lot of us had the idea of, well, I'll get I'll retire in practice. I'll bring somebody in the office. I'll get an associate. And that's the big problem now. There, a lot of places, they're even New York, they're not even coming here to do associates because the cost of living is so high.
I mean, I'd love to hear from all of you on the call what you're seeing and what you're experiencing. I mean, in the last two companies that I've been a part of, like New York was a no-go zone for the exact reasons you just said. California, no-go zone. Michigan, no-go zone, right? So there are certain states that are really difficult that make it more difficult for doctors. And you're not alone, right? So I was on a call last week with an investment banker that we're working with here, and my partner and I are working with a group of nephrologists because, incidentally, nephrologists aren't that different from chiropractors when it comes to the profitability of your business and the fact that if you're not working, you're not making money, right? Unless you have another doctor in there. And nephrology is the same way. If they don't have another doctor in there, they're not making money. So when I was talking to the investment banker, we were talking about these corporate practice of medicine states, whereby it's more difficult to own a medical clinic, regardless of what industry, and the reimbursement rates. And he was sharing that in other industries as well, not just chiropractic, that New York is challenging. Um, so, I mean, I'd love to hear, like, what are you guys experiencing? Like, what are you seeing? Is what I've seen similar to what you're experiencing, or are you seeing something totally different?
Open the floor, guys.
Well, may I make a statement?
Yeah, please.
Absolutely.
Well, I think most of the doctors who have been practicing for over 25 years probably transitioned to cash, where they're not doing insurance. And if they're doing any insurance, it's probably like Medicare. So that's how it is. So instead of like thinking that, well, what's the practice going to be? The practice is what the practice is and what you service you provide. And I
Sure.
think the doctors that have maintained interest in chiropractic and helping the patients, there's always new patients that come to the office. It's not only your reputation, it's chiropractic that people are looking for. So that's like, a viable thing for any practice that people care about people and care about, making chiropractic ready for the community. But I think it's also important to think about the people that live in that community and how much they need chiropractic. So, I mean, if somebody really has a heart out for the patients that they take care of and all the people who need chiropractic, I don't think there's much of a problem. I really don't. And I know, I mean, everything that you said tonight, I mean, most people would want to buy a knife or a gun to kill themselves. But
I
I,
know,
but
I
I,
know.
but
I
I
like.
think it's a different story. I really do.
So, do
And
you talk to younger docs, like, and have you gotten that feedback from them?
I think younger docs are, first of all, unless they had a personal miracle with chiropractic, I don't think their motivation or their intention is not like the doctors of my time. Because if you went into
Yeah,
chiropractic, like let's say if you were a mechanic and you got help by chiropractic, you said, man, I got to become a chiropractor or whatever. You went
yeah,
in with a motivation that you want to help the world. And I think everybody that's on this call feels exactly like I do. It just changed your life so much you want to help people.
yeah.
And I think that the new doctors now, I think, there's probably a percentage that feel like that, but not as much as back in the day when we started. And, there was all these problems with,
Leo,
this,
they track that at the schools, and I spoke to Macaulay.
yeah.
80% went because they had a miracle, and 20% because they thought it was going to be a good idea.
You're seeing now?
No, that was years ago.
Right,
And
right.
now 20% of the people coming in had a miracle, and the other 80% come in because they think it's a good way to make a living.
It's a job. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a lifestyle. It's not like, a calling.
Yeah.
So, there's got to be people out there that really are looking to, make the world a better place, people who are on that wavelength. And I think just like anybody who has a practice, they imagine their practice, and everything they imagined, it came true. Their practice became that. So it's just like I'm imagining there must be people that really, really, want to continue what I do. Because I think about the generations of people that I've taken care of. And, those people have families and they're going to need
Mhm.
care and other people around them. So I think that the problems that you're talking about are real. The
Yeah.
people who just have one foot in, I don't think they're all in, and I really think a lot of it is also some of the practices are maybe so big, meaning that their overhead is so big
Yeah.
that, it's hard to sell that. But if you have a practice that's not that big, like it's not costing you an arm and a leg, it's doable. It's doable for people.
You're 100% right about that piece. There is a gap that, I mean, it's kind of this no man's land
Hmm.
that if the business, the practices become almost too, I'll say too successful, but
Not too successful. I'm talking about too expensive, meaning
well,
the practice place is too big, but the doctor doesn't know how to fill it up with patients. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know what the average practice has that you sell, but the average practice, I'm assuming they get, assuming like what I get, like at least 30 or 40 new patients a month. I mean, is that what most practices get?
I mean, I don't know for your area. I mean, it just varies. I mean, it just really varies. I could tell you that, there's practices in Chicago that are insurance based and they're making $110 a visit. I
Well,
could tell
that's
you that
different.
Alaska is
Oh,
the highest in the country for Medicare reimbursement,
yeah.
right? But then you have to live in Alaska.
Yeah, but that's
Um,
all bull. I'm talking about, people that live in an area where you want to live, where there's things to do, art to see, shows you want to go to,
yeah,
things that you want to do and have a life. I don't know. I wouldn't want to live in the middle of nowhere. So
agreed.
anyway, whatever.
Yeah, no, I think you make a really good point. I mean, with any business, it's always like, how are the expenses as related to what's the money, the profit, the gross coming in, right? So when you're saying like it's too expensive,
If you
then
have
maybe they
like
don't have enough business,
four
right?
CAs and they got like, 3,000 square
Yeah.
feet, you know what I'm saying? You got like all these employees. I mean, that's crazy. If it's a small practice, I don't think it would be that hard to sell.
Yeah, I mean, again, I hope you're right. I hope you're right because I think that there are just some real factors. There are some things that are just real,
You're
right?
right in a way. You're right in a way, Leo. Like we just had Joe Borio on with the council a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
and
He sold his practice.
he couldn't sell the practice; it was too big.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
So, I mean, he was seeing too many people. He made a lot of
Right.
money at it and everything else, but he couldn't sell the practice because it was too big.
Yeah.
Right.
You
I
Well,
thought he sold. I thought I had heard that he sold. No?
know? I don't think he closed, but he didn't. I think he basically sold it to somebody that came along, but they're not the practice that he had.
Yeah. Listen, at the end of the day, I think that whatever the exit looks like, whatever that transition looks like, it's just something that I would encourage all of you to think about long before you even think you need to think about it, right? Because there are things that you can just put in place. It's like staging a house, like you walk around and you paint the walls and you patch the holes and you update the carpet. And I mean, I've been in chiropractic offices that had equipment older than me, right? And that's fine, except for it hasn't been reupholstered. And it was still that, like, 1970 something brown, whatever it was. Again, that's fine. It still worked. It was great. But it's just, it makes it harder to transition. You know what I mean? So I can't remember. Yeah, that's not important. Um, I guess so. I mean, here are some things that like I'll leave you with is I would just say wherever you are in your practice, just think about like what does that next level look like for you, right? It's not cookie cutter. It is not.
That's a key thing is what is it? Because everybody started. The reason I had you come on was when we had that talk that night. That
Yeah,
that that you ended the call with that idea about what does it look like for you? Like, at some point you're going to transition out of practice. What does it look like? You know?
Yeah.
So like, there's other people on here. I'd like to hear what they have to say. Jeff, Brian, you guys been around. Joe as well. Joanne, give me some feedback on what Angela talked about tonight, please.
Well, I think the first thing is maybe we change the terminology and not use transition, because I feel like I'm going to go in a nursing home. But
Well, okay, that's good. That's good feedback. But I was trying to get away from exit. Like in my
Right.
world, it's like, where's your exit? And I said, exit just feels too harsh to me. Like I feel like when you say exit, people think I'm here today, I'm gone tomorrow. So, hey, I'm open to feedback. You tell me
yeah,
what sounds
we'll come up with something for you, Angela.
okay.
My,
Okay, deal.
my name's Jeff. I'm actually in Pennsylvania. I know a lot of
Okay,
these gentlemen and people from New Beginnings.
cool.
And my just as an example, my idea of the ideal thing for me, I own my building, and it has an apartment up above, so it's very attractive for someone. I
Yeah.
would think the ideal person for my practice is maybe a seasoned practitioner that wants to relocate and maybe
Mm,
move here. And that way they can live above the office. They can buy the whole building, the whole corner. The practice is already there. It's established. All the equipment's in place.
okay.
Mine's not as old as you are, but it's all good equipment, or me either. Didn't mean it any particular way.
Yeah.
And then I was just thinking, the ideal thing too is if a company would come in and offer to buy the practice, which would include the building, and keep me on for as long as they would need until they could find a doctor to place in the location, because I have a tenant upstairs that's been there since I moved out 20 some years ago. So, I've got attractive things about my practice that may not be as appealing as maybe some other locations.
You do, and I'll give you a different perspective on that. So many, I shouldn't say many, but I do know a lot of chiropractors that have purchased their building, and I think that's great. Like I think that's a great investment, right? It's like buying your house. It's a really good investment. Makes you feel stable and all those things, right? From a buyer's perspective, it's um, both companies I worked for, neither of them wanted the real estate. Real estate was not ever part of the deal. And when you add real estate to a deal, it just becomes a much bigger deal. So I would just encourage you to be open to the idea that maybe it's a split deal, maybe it's one deal, but maybe it's a split deal, right? I mean, just because it's great to have a tenant upstairs that brings income in, that's awesome. But again, thinking about like the financing piece of it, like who can buy it, right? So you have to think about from your perspective, you maybe worked into it over time and you bought it over time, but now you have to think about it from the buyer. And you're saying, okay, in order to sell this practice plus real estate or building, my number is X. And then you have to think about, well, who can afford X, right? So just something to think about. But yeah, I mean, that's awesome that you did that. Well done.
Can I say another thing?
Yeah.
Well, but they'll have to either rent from you. Like if I own my building,
Yeah.
they have to rent from me. So what's the big, so you're getting income. That's not bad either.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking about both, like the practice and the building together. It
Right.
makes the deal even bigger, and you priced out a lot of potential buyers because the deal's bigger. So I was just saying be open to the idea that it might be two separate transactions. That's all.
Mhm.
But yeah, I agree with you there.
John, I'd like to add some stuff. Rick Statler here.
Go right ahead, Rick.
Okay. So a couple of things coming in there. One is, when looking at kind of the naming, the concept of that, to me, I think of the practice as a living, breathing entity, and that we want to keep that alive. We want to pass the torch. It's about passing the torch to somebody else, and seeing it as a living, breathing entity. Sometimes as we're looking to think about down the road, that transition, that selling, we need to give it some CPR. Most people don't think about putting some energy in and building up the practice in preparation for leaving it.
Yeah.
And that's really something, and just even from the doctor standpoint, doing that is very vitalizing for the doctor themselves. So just a thought in there.
Good
The
ideas, Rick.
Good
Yeah.
I just
start.
had a friend who, a mechanic. He worked for the his former boss, and he worked out a deal where he bought the business first,
Mhm.
and then while he was buying the business, he rented, and then once he paid off the business, then he worked on paying and buying off the property. And we just had a little party for him, that he finally paid off the building and now he owns it. And it's very similar to chiropractic, in that example, that was just being given. And probably my biggest thing I'd like to say is the concept, um, of personality based versus principle based practices. So many people do fall into that. Their practice is their persona. They're the practice. And when we're selling our personality, and now we want to make that transition, we want to sell, we want to pass the torch, it's very hard to do that. But when we focus on a principle based practice and we're selling the principles while we're in the practice, that we're really pressing the principles, now you have a much more marketable product, if you will, for somebody to come in because it's independent, and when, patients say, oh, I don't know, when you retire, when you go, it's like, how can you even think to not have chiropractic? Where have I failed you in that message? That principle, of chiropractic is part of your life, regardless of who you want the best that you can have, but it's part of your life. And so it's a principle based presentation. So I just want to offer that in, to my thought, down the road. I'm in practice like some of these guys, since 84, so it's over 40 years. Not ready to roll out, but down you're thinking about what I have and how I build it for some eventuality down the road.
Great insights, Rick. Really great insights.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I mean, I completely agree with you. I mean, listen, like all of my chiropractors are docs like you, right? Like, I mean, that have the principle, and have that piece to it. I'm just not as convinced that the new grads have it like you guys do. I
They
just,
don't.
They
I'm
don't.
just
They don't.
not.
They don't.
I think
Yeah,
that,
You know,
Practice.
we're having a conversation, and Joe knows about this. We're having a conversation in New York about uh, how the schools are putting out a chiropractor that is taught that subluxation doesn't exist, but it's in
Yeah.
our state law. So,
Yeah.
the schools are putting out a product that is, as I've said to a couple of people, I'm waiting for the class action suit because they're being given a document that says they're a chiropractor, but they don't know how to deliver it.
Yeah,
And
I
you know
think
what,
it's watered down. If I think chiropractic is being watered down, honestly, because what
is.
you're talking about and these principles, from what I see, is drastically watered down. I mean, I was just at Parker Vegas. I go to Parker Vegas every year. I go to FCA every year. Sometimes I go to Chiro Congress. I'm involved in a couple different groups here. I mean, in 25 years, what I experience, and I'm talking to chiropractors all over the country. Um, I think it's watered down. And so my concern is the clinics that and the businesses that you've built, the practices you've built, the patients you have, the docs that come behind you, they don't have that principle you do.
And one of the things in thinking about that, addressing that, and that's why I started out that the practice is a living, breathing entity.
Yeah.
I have seen my patients, and sometimes it's wonderful because I will have patients speak to my staff because some of the patients, a good many of them, can speak better chiropractic than most chiropractors. And
Yeah.
if somebody came, and that's not a lie. I've demonstrated that many times with my staff. And if somebody stepped in that didn't have those values, this practice, I don't even want to say this practice would hold those people accountable. Can we build a practice that is that strong of a living entity that the practice itself would hold the new doctor accountable? That's a whole, another level of
Well, that's what
thinking.
she's talking about, Rick. It takes a really special doc to do that. Brian and Ronnie, you had something to say.
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't have a month in practice where I don't have someone come in to me and tell me their chiropractor just closed. Sometimes no warning, sometimes a month warning. They just
Yeah.
closed. That's it.
Yeah.
I have a colleague who, said she was letting her practice die a slow death. I think that I have a question for all you on the call. How many of you would be willing to take a little less than you wanted for your practice, knowing that you're helping a new doc come out, teaching them, and knowing that your legacy lives on?
Yeah, I think everybody would.
Yeah, we would all be behind that. I would.
I
Yeah.
mean, like, I would love to see these people, even if it's not principle based, and but that works for the two doctors, the one leaving and the one coming in, making it work for both, so that there's somewhere so people can get a job. I mean, I would much prefer it be principle based, but whereas people can continue to get adjusted, and docs coming out of school have a potential to earn an income and have some mentorship and really understand how to adjust, talk to the patients, work day to day with them. Because let's face it, they don't learn that in school. I mean, subluxation is barely mentioned at NYCC. I know Life and Sherman are a different entity, but
I think you make a great point. I
It's a
think that
great point.
we've got to do a better job of figuring out kind of a safe place to land for these new grads and docs. It's I haven't shared this, but I was talking to Dr. Mack about this a couple months ago, because I was approached by a couple doctors in New York that want to exit their practice in the next, handful of years, 3 to 5 years. And, we had a conversation, and I said, gosh, I don't know how to do this, because they want to sell collectively, because what they know is that if you sell as a single business, you're really only going to get a fraction, right? Like maybe 1 times of what you are earning right now. But if you sell as a group, you could get more, because the other side of the table, the buyer, is looking for a group so that they can, reduce their risk, quite honestly.
mm-hmm.
So when we would enter a market, for one of the companies I worked for, our philosophy was land and expand. And the idea was we had to find 5 in a region, and we couldn't open the market or buy in that area until we found 5 that were willing to sell. And then we could bolt on and we could add more. Because at 5, you start to get synergy. You can share marketing resources, it changes your buying power. You could even swap doctors, right? I mean, you have fill-in doctors now, right? Mm-hmm. One of the companies I work for here in Chicago, one of the smart things that they did is they had a training program, right? So a new doc comes into their business, they have a 12-week training program. Now, you can't afford to do that, right? If you're a single practitioner and you're bringing an associate, you can't afford to just pay a doctor for 12 weeks in order to just learn without doing anything, right? Other than learning your systems and your software and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, so the idea and what my partner and I have created is this model, which is called a syndicate. And it's really bringing together like-kind businesses to, so to say, sell or transition at the same time, but with different pathways. So the idea is to put the power back into the seller's hands, right? The idea is to get you guys more value for what you've built, and to also give the buyer a better product. And so with these docs in New York, I'm having this conversation with them, and I'm thinking, okay, so if we can do this in New York, and if we can bolt these doctors together, right? Let's say there's 10 of them or 15 of them, whatever, right? In the state of New York. And let's say we work with every one of, let's say it's all of you, that I have a conversation with all of you, and Jeff, maybe you want to stay for a year, and John, you want to stay for 3 years, or, Ronnie, you're not sure how long you want to stay, right? But I work with you to say, tell me what you'd like that to look like. Like, tell me let's talk about you and your business and what you'd like that to look like. And the idea, which is not yet proven, but it's piloting, is to do that, to bring a group of doctors, bring a group of businesses together in a region that would sell collectively, but would stay for however long they wanted to stay in their own business, not have to change anything in terms of the way you operate and all this kind of stuff, knowing that at some point you're all going to leave, right? So that leaves a void. And so from a buyer's perspective, you have to go like, okay, how do I fix that? So that's actually what led me to reach out to Dr. Mack and saying, tell me about New York. How do we fix this problem? Not just for New York, but for the country. How do we build a program that, is similar to, or something on the lines of like the traveling nurse program, right? We've got Teach Without Borders. We've got, the traveling nurse program. We've got, or is it Doctors Without Borders? I think it's Doctors Without Borders, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, how do we create something in this profession that new grads can come out into this, like, let's say maybe it's a 2-year thing, right? And it's kind of this soft landing. It's like this middle ground. I think in like my friends at PA, I think it would be like a fellowship or something like that, right? And let's say we put something like that together, like, would that work, right? Would it work to put together this program where, let's say, doctors came out into it and then they became fill-in doctors for all of you? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, but it's like, would it be possible to build something where you could all be part of something? You could all, quote unquote, sell your business at the same time, but stay for as long as you wanted. We could get you more value for what you've built. And we could also build up this program of new grads that would become rotating doctors between the clinics that would learn from each of you, right? Because you all have different techniques, you all have different practices, you all have different ways that you run your business and so forth. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to hear your thoughts because I'm telling you, I'm asking questions because I think that there's a real gap, and I really want to know, like, how to solve it. Like, how do we fix it? Like, how do we get those businesses that you've built, like, to transition in an awesome way, right? Like
I'm
the
going to ask you guys to take Angela's email if you want
Yeah.
to have this conversation any other time.
yeah,
Angela, I just want to thank you so much for coming on tonight. Anybody
course.
else, just please step up. Give me some thanks. Give me some love back here.
Thank
you very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Let's
Thank
think
you.
about it.
Learned
you.
something
You know
new
what?
tonight.
It's
You
a
guys
topic
feel
that's really
free
hard
to
to talk,
reach out.
really hard to talk about. You did an excellent job.
Yeah, Angela,
Oh,
it
thank
is a hard topic, and I definitely appreciate hearing this from you and thinking forward time frames. Hopefully, I'm not there yet for a little while, but that's going to come quick, like you say. All of a sudden, you don't want to practice anymore. Yeah, that's
It
pretty
comes
wild.
fast. Guys,
Yeah.
please reach out to me. Like, I love all of you, and I love this profession. I just really want to figure out like how to help.
Like to
So yeah, please find me on Facebook or LinkedIn or reach out. Anything I can do to help, let me know.
Thank
I'll
you.
throw
Johnny,
Thank you.
Johnny, could you email her contact information to us?
You
Yeah,
got
I
it
have
right
her
now.
information. I'll send it to you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
one
you.
last thought, if I could there.
Go right ahead.
Yeah.
So two things, Angela, come to mind for me. One I forgot about even. I had purchased a practice. I had already been in practice, somebody that wanted to retire. He had a very eclectic practice that really couldn't sell in a home office and a tiny thing. And the piece that I'm looking at was how we made it workable. Number one, I didn't need the practice, but he needed a buyer. But what we did was that from the proceeds of his practice, I was able to pay him so it didn't shoulder me any additional hurt, if you will. He got good money from it, actually a little better than you would have otherwise. And for me, it didn't cost me to buy the practice because the practice actually paid for its purchase. And I think looking at that type of thing really does help in the formulas.
I love it. You've found a creative way. I love it.
Yes, and in fact, it was
Well
when we
done.
sat down with lawyers, they were finding all kinds of problems, and myself and the doctor, we stood up and said, "Listen, you guys, this is what we want. Work it out. We're going for tea, and then we're coming back to sign the papers," because they were finding every reason to make it not work. And so that's another piece there too.
Yeah, I mean, good for you because definitely lawyers will do that. They'll find lots of reasons for it to not work. So that's awesome. Like, well done. I mean, I believe that every chiropractic office that's saved or transitioned is a win. And it's just sometimes, you have to be creative. And and I guess that's the other thing I would encourage you to do is just be creative, right? Be open and be creative because the models that used to be the tried and true models in chiropractic, they're just not the same today as they were.
Thank you very
Anyway,
much.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Thank
night,
you.
everybody.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Thank
night.
you.
Night.
Thank you.
Bye.
See, and having been spending time in the Middle East. The question